Hey everyone, thank you for the support you have been giving me. At a certain point, I thought my channel was dead, but you guys brought back to life and I really appreciate it. With that, let's begin. Third POV. Izuku cursed his stupidity for not securing Stain when he had him down the first time. It was a huge oversight on his part, and Izuku wishes he had remembered to do it because now he was in a fight for his life while protecting two individuals. Izuku reached up and activated his comms link, and he heard All Might's voice on the other side as Stain glared at him. "Halo, did you find bnha?" All Might asked over the comms. Izuku really wanted to laugh at that question but answered it. "Yay. I found him, All Might, but I am in a bit of a situation. It was as we were afraid of, and bnha came after Stain. There is another down pro hero and neither can move. I can't get them out without Stain attacking my back, and he's not happy with me right now since I knocked him out once already," Izuku stated over the comms as the mouth guard blocked his voice from going out since it had that nice feature built in when he wanted it to work like that. All Might cursed on the other side of the line and told Izuku he would get there as soon as possible, but he was still finishing up the Namos. All Might gave him about a 5-minute ETA and told him to survive as Izuku explained his location to All Might. Izuku turned the comms off and allowed his voice to flow out of the mouth guard. "I take it you won't let me escape with them, will you?" Izuku asked, and Stain looked at him and shook his head. "Well, that's a bit mean of you. Are you pissed for me sludging you across the face?" Izuku asked, and Stain's glare got sharper at that comment. Note to self, don't taunt the villain that can kill you, Izuku thought as he really wishes he would have not made that comment. Izuku glanced at bnha and Native before looking back at Stain. "Whenever either of you comes out of his quirk effects, then I want you to grab the other person and run so I can escape this fight. I may be strong, but I lack experience against someone as experienced as Stain," Izuku stated, and Native nodded his head. However, bnha decided to open his mouth even more and say that Izuku should just take Native and leave since he should be the one to deal with Stain. "Okay, enough out of you. Heroes should and act on vengeance alone since it clouds their judgments," Izuku yelled at bnha, and he snapped shut quickly but still looked like he wanted to protest Izuku fighting Stain instead of him. Stain was done waiting around as he charged at Izuku. As Stain did his attacks, he asked Izuku a question and asked if he was a true hero like All Might. "I honestly don't know how you define true heroes, so I don't know if I would fit your category, but I can tell you All Might is human and makes mistakes. For example, when he met me the first time, he told me I could never be a hero, but he later corrected his statement and apologized because I had caught him at a bad time," Izuku said as he dodged the blades and grabbed rocks off the ground and threw them at Stain, which forced him to dodge away from Izuku since the rockets contained some damn good amount of power and could likely have broken a bone or two since he threw them at 20% of one for all. "Oh, I like that you admit that you might not fall into my category. I also liked how to focus on saving them instead of defeating me. I think you may indeed be a worth hero just like All Might. After all, he did take you on as a personal student, which he hasn't done before," Stain said as he threw a blade at Izuku that nicked his face. Stain's eyes widened and charged up to Izuku, and his tongue came flying out. "It's his tongue that helps him get the blood to lock people up," Izuku thought as he bent his body backward and kicked Stain in the chest, but he didn't have enough time to put a lot of force behind the kick, so Stain quickly recovered from it. "That was a bit close. You almost got me with your quirk, Stain," Izuku stated, and Stain raised an eyebrow and asked how he knew about his quirk. "I studied the case files. All Might and I were actually in town to capture you since we wanted to stop you from murdering people. I was able to put some theories together that your quirk is blood-based due to you using swords and minimum wounds. There is typically 1 or 2 cuts and then a killing blow wound, which shows you needed to wound them a bit before you dealt the killing blow. Now, what would you get from said wounds? It is the blood that you get in need, and I confirmed this with the reports from your last victim who said you licked your sword after cutting him," Izuku stated, and Stain nodded his head, impressed with Izuku's deduction skills. However, Stain wasn't done either as he charged once again at Izuku, aiming to defeat him since he had stopped him from killing the fake heroes. "Halo, I will say this now. I won't be killing you tonight, but I need to stop you from getting in my way. I deem you as a worthy hero just like All Might," Stain said as he charged Izuku, but then out of nowhere came bnha as he tried to attack Stain but got cut again and had his blood taken. "Are you kidding me? Why didn't you save Native so we could have escaped?" Izuku yelled out, pissed as he was forced to close the distance with Stain and force him away from killing. bnha just talked once again about it was his responsibility to stop Stain and not Halo's, which just earned an eye roll from Izuku. Izuku grabbed and tossed him a bit too roughly, he would admit, towards Native, so he would have fewer spots to defend since he wouldn't need to divide his attention as much. Izuku asked Native if he could move, but the hero said no, which confused them all but Stain. Native said he was down before bnha as well, which clued Izuku in on what it might be. "What's your blood types?" Izuku asked, and they gave it, and Izuku took a guess. Stain's quirk involves blood, so the time limit may be based on a few things. Blood type, how many people he's downed, age of the people, or something else, but I am sure it's blood type, Izuku stated, and Stain smiled and confirmed it. That's useful to know, but I still can't get down since if I do it means their deaths, Izuku thought as he waited for Stain to make his move. As they were eyeballing each other, there was a sudden drop in temperature as ice came traveling down the alleyway. Both Stain and Izuku jumped out of the way to avoid it. Who the hell? Izuku said that ice would have hit him if he wasn't fast enough to dodge. Then he saw who it came from, and it was Todoroki from UA. What is with all of these people coming out of nowhere and stopping me? Stain yelled as he was getting annoyed. Izuku had to agree since this only complicated matters since he was highly doubtful that the UA student had permission to be here or use his quirk. Izuku looked at Todoroki and called out to him. Well, it's nice to see you, I guess. Anyway, would you mind grabbing those two so we can pull back and retreat as I can stop Stain from coming after us if I don't need to carry them? Izuku asked, and he was not expecting the answer he received from the UA student. Todoroki looked at Halo and glared a bit. I will defeat Stain and show my father that I am stronger than All Might's protege, which will prove I don't need his damn fire, Todoroki said as he launched more ice towards Stain. Izuku, who was perched upon a dumpster, just looked dumbfounded. Do you even have permission to be here or even use your quirk? Izuku asked, and Todoroki said it was fine since his father would cover for him anyway. That just confirmed that Izuku had another vigilante student on his hands. He pushed his earpiece and watched Stain to ensure he didn't kill anyone. All Might's voice came over. Halo, sorry I am running late. Another Namu had shown up and it was a flying type, but I dealt with it. I am on my way now, so what is the situation? All Might asked, and Izuku explained how another UA student named Todoroki appeared who doesn't have permission to use his quirk or be there. All Might. He's only here to take credit to capture Stain because he wants to show me up. He refused to secure the victims and get them out of here so I could fall back as I fought Stain. As such, I can't retreat without leaving him to die. He's also refusing to use the fire side of his quirk, which would be far better to deal with Stain. Shit got to go get here soon, Izuku said as he ended the comlink and charged forward as Stain was about to kill Todoroki since he paralyzed him with a knife that he threw and went after it to drink the blood. As Todoroki fell to the ground, Izuku grabbed him and tossed him to the other two downed victims. As Izuku did that, he grabbed some rocks off the ground and threw them at 20% power to force Stain back. God damn it, Halo. Why won't you let me kill those 3 fake heroes? Stain yelled out, and Izuku rolled his eyes. Apologize, but meddling in other people's business is the heroic thing to do. Also, question. Are you working with the League of Villains since their Namus have been attacking the city? Izuku asked, and Stain seemed offended as he said he would never work with those human scum, which made Izuku a bit happy. He would make sure that was spread out later on by the police to ensure no villains connected the two. As Stain looked ready to attack again, Izuku called out behind him and said, All Might over here, Izuku said as he widened his eyes. Stain looked around but didn't see All Might. He turned around to be met with a phantom punch as Izuku has performed the move right when Stain turned around, as it would be enough time for it to connect with the villain. Once the move connected, Stain went flying back and hit a dumpster, and Izuku charged forward to ensure he didn't make the same mistake as last time and allow the villain to get back up and recover. As such, Izuku was on top of him and quickly detained him with some rope that he carried in his supplies. By this time, Ida and the others were up once again and had come over to Izuku, who was disarming Stain. And as he was doing that, Ida took steps closer to Stain, and Izuku stopped and got right in front of him, blocking his path. Stop right there. I don't know what you want to do, but if you do anything more, then you are committing even more crimes since he has already been detained. So I suggest you to take a step back, because let me ask you this. Would your brother really be okay with what you have done tonight, or would he be disappointed in you? Izuku asked, and Ida's eyes widened at what he heard from Halo about his brother, and he lowered his head in shame as he gritted his teeth and choked out an apology as he took a step back. Stain looked up at Izuku from the ground and asked why did he stop the kid, and Izuku looked at him and started to finish disarming him. Because the battle is over and I am only charged with detaining and arresting criminals. I am not the jury, nor am I the judge. You will face punishment soon enough, and you are now in my custody, and I will ensure your safety until I turn you over to the police. I believe it's the hero's job to save everyone, even if that includes the villains that they had just defeated, Izuku stated, and a booming voice came behind them. Well said, Halo. That is indeed correct of what the hero's job is truly meant to be, for those that truly represent actual heroes and not those in it for fame or money, All Might said as he walked up to them. All Might had arrived right after Izuku had done the phantom punch and decided to observe the situation and jump in if it changed. He also saw what Ida was about to do as well, and the glares that the Todoroki boy has been giving his son. All Might knew UA would need to deal with the two of them since this behavior could not be tolerated, but the first problem would be the police. Soon other heroes and Endeavor arrived on site as they found Halo, 2 UA students, pro-hero native, and All Might on site already. Endeavor looked at his son, which flinched back a bit but said nothing. Soon the police and ambulance arrived to take custody of Stain and to have the injured delivered to the hospital. All Might asked if Halo was alright, and Izuku just told him he had a small cut on his cheek that can be easily healed. All Might nodded his head, and soon they were all heading to the hospital since the police chief would be waiting there for statements of what happened. Third POV. Izuku and All Might both jumped away and headed to the hospital before everyone else would arrive. This was to give All Might time to relax in his skinny form before he had to buff up again, since he was closing in on his limit with only about an hour left for the day. Overall, they have been doing good, and All Might and Izuku have been able to spend at least 10 hours out on the field, with All Might only having to use about 2 hours of his limit each day. As such, the press and everyone else was never aware of All Might's time limit because they always believed that All Might was nearby Izuku watching, which was true, but just in his skinny form to save time. Okay, run me through the details of what all happened before we talk to the chief of police, because now Endeavor is involved in this and I want to make sure everything goes how we want it to and things aren't covered up, because those students will need to be dealt with by UA. All Might stated, and Izuku nodded his head since he agreed. As such, he started to explain to All Might about showing up to face off Stain after he heard a shout of his name. He arrived just in time to save Ida from being killed since Stain was about to do it. Izuku admitted that he screwed up in not securing Stain the first time he knocked him out and that he learned from that mistake. All Might nodded his head but didn't speak since he wanted Izuku to explain everything first before he spoke. Then Izuku talked about the fighting Stain and how Ida wanted Izuku to leave because Ida was there for revenge and wanted to deal with Stain himself. Izuku mentioned how Stain, and he ended up talking about how Stain wondered if Izuku was a true hero or not before somehow Izuku proved himself to Stain and got declared as a true hero like All Might was. As he explained how the fight then went, he hit on the topic of Todoroki showing up. So, Todoroki didn't care that his attack would have hit me and Stain. He had zero regard for that, and when I asked him to take Ida and Native so we could escape, Todoroki said he would defeat Stain to show his father that he was stronger than I was because I am your protege, which would prove he didn't need to use his fire sign. So that is concerning in itself, Izuku stated, and All Might had to agree, but he let Izuku keep going since he didn't feel like that was the end of the mess. Izuku then talked about how he asked if Todoroki had permission to even be there or use his quirk. Todoroki didn't have clearance to be there or use his quirk. I know this with how he responded to my question. He stated that his father would cover for him anyway, which confirmed he was acting as a vigilante at that time. Izuku stated, and All Might groaned as this was a complete mess. Izuku nodded his head at All Might's groan and contained on how he had radioed back to All Might at that time and watched the fight, looking for a chance to get involved since Todoroki's ice was troublesome to fight around as it was being thrown, so it kind of limited Izuku's involvement for a bit before Stain paralyzed Todoroki as well, and Izuku was forced to save him as well. Stain got pissed since I wouldn't let him kill them. Anyway, as we got close to the end, I asked him if he was involved with the League of Villains, and he denied the claim, so we need to alert the police so that gets out to deter villains that follow Stain from joining the League. Then it was the end of the fight where I performed a phantom punch. I did it by getting him to look away as I called out behind him that you were behind him, and he turned around, and I performed the phantom punch that gave me the chance to detain him. I assume at that point you were present since I felt you nearby me, Izuku asked, and All Might nodded his head knowing the rest of the story. Soon they headed into the hospital after All Might told Izuku some things to correct and how he dealt with the situation in the future, and Izuku nodded his head and they agreed to talk about it more later on. However, it was time to deal with the chief of police for Hasu. As they were walking down the hallway of the hospital, they came upon Endeavor telling the chief of police to credit his son with the capture of Stain since he had authorized his son to fight, which annoyed All Might and Izuku. At that time, All Might spoke up. Really, NG, falsifying police reports and trying to cover up your son's illegal quirk usage and vigilantism, All Might stated with an annoyed tone, and the chief of police turned around to be faced with All Might and Halo. Endeavor looked pissed and the police chief looked worried about what he got caught in between. The police chief asked for All Might to explain, and he did so. The chief of police looked at Endeavor with a frown on his face. Endeavor, this is a serious matter that you just attempted to lie to the police about such a large matter. It would be one thing if we covered up the UA students' involvement altogether, but to shift credit from a completely authorized individual when your son only made the issue worse is not going to happen. Give me a reason I shouldn't walk in there and arrest your son and end his dreams of becoming a pro hero, asked the police chief, who knew better than to get into a public fight with All Might, who was really loved by everyone. He would rather deal with a pissed Endeavor instead of a pissed All Might in the public if they ever learned of them covering this up and shifting credit away from All Might's protege if they had done it. Endeavor stated he didn't know what All Might was talking about and said the protege of All Might was likely lying to get credit. Do realize, Endeavor, that there are others involved, and if we really need to get critical of this situation, then we can always call the police detective with the lie detector, but at that point, this becomes a larger issue which would turn ugly in the eyes of the public that the number 2 hero was caught lying and abusing his authority. Do you really want to go down this path because your son even admitted on the site of the battle that he didn't have permission and it was heard by Stain even? What do you think will happen if this is done as you wish and Stain alerts his followers of your lie and the police cover-up, which he would have full ability to do so because he wouldn't be denied the right to send letters out of prison since he doesn't pose a risk of doing such things? Izuku stated as he looked at Endeavor. Endeavor shut up really quickly at the threat made by Izuku and was silent before looking at the police chief and said he must have heard his son wrong and apologized for misinforming the police chief before he walked away. Soon the police chief got the entire story from Izuku and what All Might witnessed. The police chief also confirmed that Izuku had permission for the entire internship week and even received permission again at the time they went out on patrol since they had come to Hasu to track Stain down anyway. I see. Then let's go with this story to the public. All Might and his protege Halo arrived in Hasu tracking Stain down when the Nomas attacked Hasu. During the fight, they discovered a UA student was missing during the conflict, and All Might ordered his protege to go track down the missing UA student who he found under attack from Stain. As such, under the authorization from All Might, the hero of resilience, Halo started to defend the UA student, the pro-hero native who was already downed, and another UA student who was on site as well who had gotten attacked by Stain. Halo defended the downed individuals and successfully defeated Stain after a long and drawn-out fight before All Might arrived on site to help clean up. After that, all injured parties were transported to the hospital and Stain transported to receive medical care and be contained in jail for trial. The police chief stated and looked at All Might and Halo for their agreement since it would keep the UA students from being arrested, but the matter wouldn't be over for them since UA would be dealing with them. All Might agreed to it and Izuku just agreed since All Might agreed. After that, they headed to a nurse so they could heal Izuku's wound on his cheek before they stopped into the UA student's hospital room. As they entered, they found Ida's older brother, Manuel, Ida, and Todoroki all in the room. Ida looked down in shame and Todoroki had a face of neutral attitude, but Izuku could see some anger in his eyes and had to recite rolling his eyes. The police chief explained what would be happening and that their crimes would be covered up but that UA would be left to deal with them. Understand this. We could be arresting you and your dreams of ever being heroes would be over, so you better be grateful that your dreams don't end here unless UA decided to kick you out. The police chief stated before leaving as he warned of them not to reveal the true details of the events if they would be arrested, since the only difference in the events is they committed crimes in the real events and didn't do anything to contribute to capturing Stain, so they had no benefit of talking about it. Ada apologized to All Might and Halo for what he did and they waved it off. Before leaving, Izuku turned to Todoroki and spoke. Todoroki, I don't know why you won't use your fire, but if you keep going down your path then you will be just like your father. As far as I can see, due to your quest of only using your ice side, is that you look down on everyone in arrogance and are only using half of your power. So my question to you is, what are you going to do when your ice isn't enough one day to save a child and you have to walk up to that mother and apologize to her for not saving her child because you refuse to use your fire when it could have saved the child? Right now it appears as if you're just becoming a nice version of Endeavor, so I hope you realize that the fire from your quirk isn't his. It's your power, and your power alone, because he can't summon it out of you. He can't control it. Only you can do that, so start using your damn powers, because it's the desire and wishes of yourself that determine how good or how evil your quirk is, and not that bastard Endeavor. I truly hope you understand what I am saying. Izuku stated and left as he saw Todoroki's eyes widen as he was caught up in memories from his past from when his mother was still around. He remembered how she would tell him that the fire from his quirk is not his father's, and it didn't matter what blood went through his veins. Suddenly, small sparks of fire started on his shoulder and he was shocked at what he had done. He used his fire, but he was still caught up in his memories of his mother and what Halo had just said, as All Might and Izuku were walking down the hallway. All Might asked what that conversation was about. Izuku looked at All Might and said he believes Endeavor may have or is still busing his son. All Might was shocked and asked how he knew that. I have zero physical proof, but the picture I see says it's going on due to the scar on his face, and from what I know his mother gave him that from what I found online a while ago. However, he still uses his ice side, which relates to his mother, so either she didn't do it or he doesn't blame her for it. That leads to Endeavor being responsible for it, and the fact that Todoroki doesn't use his fire, which relates to Endeavor, makes a damning picture. I think you should have Principal Nezu start digging into Endeavor and seeing if he can find any evidence of abuse on Todoroki, his mother, or any other children, Izuku said to All Might, who agreed to alert Nezu of the theory. The principal would be one of the best people to deal with Endeavor if he was abusive towards his family. With that, guys, I will be catching up soon and see you in the next video. Peace.